Greetings, friends and citizens of the world. This is Brother Bart's Conspiracy Corner News. I am Bart Sibrel. Welcome to this very special episode of Conspiracy Corner News. I had to remember myself, and you may remember that a few months ago I said I wanted to more personalize Conspiracy Corner News, let you all know what's going on in my life. Personally, it tied in with my work, like the book that I'm writing, which is technically done. I've done 2 drafts of it. We need to do 2 drafts more. My source, who named the code name for the project, the location of the base where it was filmed, the first moon landing, the dates, June 1st through 3rd, 1968, a list of 15 people who were there at the time. He was chief of security. He has been harassed. Men in Black visited him, threatened to kill him. Had to call the White House senator to get protection for him. Now a reporter who was doing a story about all this. Now they're not apparently calling me anymore. Like they've been threatened. A lot of strange things going on about releasing this information in the book. They tend to go after the leaker, not the person they give the information to. So hopefully I'm okay. However, about a week ago, I guess a week ago today of this recording, I had heart surgery. Now, the heart surgery is something called a cardiac ablation. And what that is that I had an irregular heartbeat that began as soon as I moved into this building, which has a lot of smokers in it. And this is a non-smoking building. And yet, I've calculated about 25% of it is smokers. And it's kind of a grid high-rise. If you spread those around the apartment, that's about 65 people still smoking inside, because only 10 are ever seen outside of the smoking areas, the same 10 over and over again. And that if you divide them up, that means every tenant in this building has 2 connecting walls with the smoker. And when you walk inside in my house, you would swear that there's someone smoking inside this apartment, even though it's my neighbor smoking. I had a smoker above me, beneath me, to my left and to my right. And I've calculated with 4 smokers surrounding me who smoke 14 cigarettes a day. And for 9 years living in the building, I have breathed in over 180,000 cigarettes, secondhand smoke, or up to that amount since I moved into the building. And so the irregular heartbeat that I had came from overstimulation. I don't drink caffeine or alcohol because I'm an Adventist, so nicotine, of course, is a great stimulant, almost as strong as cocaine, and I believe it's from the secondhand smoke I was breathing in for 10 years in a non-smoking building that led to this condition. And then about 4 years ago, they said, well, we can zap you, with those resuscitating electrodes that they put on a dead person who's gone flatline. And we'll shock your heart into a rhythm. First, we give you 150 volts. If that doesn't work, we'll turn you up to, 175, 200, 220, and so on. Fortunately, you're under general anesthesia at the time. And so I had that procedure 4 years ago. It took 3 shocks to get my heart into a regular rhythm. And that treatment lasted about a year. Then they put me under general anesthesia, shocked me again. A year later, they did it a 3rd time. And they're like, instead of shocking you every year, we could go inside your heart. And from what I understand, at least at the time, they were burning off certain electrodes on one side of my heart. I believed at the time on the outside of my heart, to kind of balance out the electricity, and then it'll hopefully won't go into an irregular rhythm. Well, that was about a year ago. The 3rd time I said, well, if this happens one more time, I'll go ahead and have this heart surgery. And sure enough, a year later, I had another occurrence where I had the irregular heartbeat. I've got a blood pressure monitor that shows that warning, irregular heartbeat, and they say you got to come in immediately when that happens and have your heart shocked. And so I've done that 4 times. After the 3rd time, I promised that I would have the procedure done so that I wouldn't have to keep having this done, being electrocuted. So it was my understanding that what they would do, and here's a little bit of a drawing, is they would go inside a vein here, kind of at the top of my leg, and go all the way, and what I thought was burn these, connections on one side of the heart to balance it out. That's kind of my perception, according to their description, to my layman ears, what was going on. It's really weird because after the surgery, after I was asleep for 2 hours while they did the surgery, my wife thinks it may have been 4, but I think it's somewhere between 2 and 4 hours I was in there. And they basically, inserted 4 wires that apparently were so big I couldn't sit up for 4 hours after the surgery for fear those wounds, which were so severe, would bleed. In fact, I've got bruises around the top of my legs about as big as a large man's hand right now. So funny though, after the surgery, I asked the doctor who visited me the next day, were these wires that you put in there on the outside of my heart or on the inside of my heart? Because I thought they were on the outside. And I went into the operating room with 100% confidence, not the least bit nervous, thinking this is a blessing. I'll have better health because of this, so why be worried? And but then somehow subconsciously, I must have known what was going on, because the question popped in my mind the next day to ask the doctor, were these, wires that or veins you were burning off, with electrodes or lasers inside my heart or inside my body, were they on the outside of my heart or on the inside? He goes, oh, on the inside. And then he says we had to poke a hole in your heart in order to get in there, and it should heal up fine. So if I have a bruise where the needle went in on my leg the size of my hand, you can imagine the bruise that I have on my heart from having a hole poked through it in order to get to the inside of it. And apparently that's what they do. They are coming into a vein here, but then they poke a hole on the inside of the heart to get to a particular chamber where they burn off certain electrodes or whatever. The operating room looked something like this. It was pretty big, pretty elaborate. There were like 12 people in there working on me simultaneously. And an interesting thing is one of the guys, he saw my name on the patient list, comes over, takes his mask off and says, I want to shake your hand. I've seen a funny thing happen on the way to the moon 50 times. He says, I'm not kidding. 50 times. And thank you so much for making that movie, opening my eyes, and so forth. So then I said, oh, well then if you've seen a funny thing happen 50 times, what did you think of Astronauts Gone Wild? And he says, what is that? Never heard of it. Now, that's pretty strange if you ask me. For example, one of my contacts in the military, right? Been in the military, intelligent person, following current events. I asked him regarding 9/11, what did you think about Building 7? And he says, what is Building 7? I mean, most people on this channel follow alternative media. I typed in Building 7 on YouTube. There was only one video that came up, at least in the first 10 or 20 or so choices, only one that showed Building 7 collapse, and it's a video that says it collapsed for normal reasons because of a furniture fire in one office spread throughout the building. Basically, it's the government's BS about why this building collapsed, okay? So just take a look at this in case you haven't seen it in a while. So there's the World Trade Center before they collapsed, and one of these buildings around here is Building 7. I don't know if that's it or not. That's about that height. These are about 100 stories tall, and Building 7 was almost 50 stories tall. So when these collapsed, debris fell over and caused a tiny little fire, and within hours, the whole building collapsed like it was imploded, which, 2,000 architects and engineers signed a petition risking their lifelong reputations, saying that it's physically impossible for a steel-framed skyscraper to collapse by a fire, even if they're hit by an airplane. In fact, the engineer for the building, who they suckered into the building so that they would kill him when the towers went down, because weeks before he said on camera, when someone asked him what would happen if one of these was hit by an airplane, he said it'd be like throwing a pencil through a screen door. Structurally, it would have no effect on the building. He said that thing could be hit with 10 airplanes and it would still stand. And lo and behold, they suckered him into the building. It collapsed, so he would never be able to give that testimony live, not knowing that it was actually recorded. If you can find it out there, good luck, but I've seen it myself. So let's take a look. Here's Building 7. You can see the explosions going off on the inside of the columns. Then you see a whole line of explosions going off here, and then the building collapses uniformly. And the only video on YouTube that'll show it is saying, no, there's no conspiracy. A furniture fire, caused that explosion. Okay. Whatever. So anyway, for some reason, this guy in the operating room, he never heard of my second film. And I've been getting emails, lots of them from all around the world. They say, I'm not showing up in any searches. My films are not showing up in any searches. So you can see, if 3/4 of the American public never knew that there was a third building that collapsed, I mean, how is that even possible? I mean, the CIA controls the media so much, a building collapsing in sight of everybody on the news one time, still 3/4 of Americans have never heard that 3 buildings went down on 9/11, not just 2. And a fan of my film, who's seen a funny thing happen on the way to the moon 50 times, has never heard of the follow-up film, Astronauts Gone Wild, because it's never suggested under, immediately after the film, which would obviously be the number one suggestion. They're, dragging it off of YouTube, just like they did with the footage of Building 7 coming down. Well, anyway, they had this big monitor up there too that had, I think, something like a live x-ray going on me, and they could kind of see what they were doing for the 2 or so hours that I was being operated on. But here's what I wanted to tell everybody, okay? So this was a week ago, Thursday. I'm recording this on Thursday to be uploaded tomorrow, Friday. So that would be Thursday, June 11th. I went under general anesthesia around 7:30, woke up around noon, and apparently I was on the operating table anywhere between 7:30 and I guess 11:30, 2 to 4 hours. My wife and I were not really sure. And then I woke up in the recovery room. And then I went to a private room to make sure, over the next day I didn't drop dead. Or if I did, they could, resuscitate me in the hospital, make sure that, this procedure went fine. I figured they didn't cut my heart open or chest open. It's no big deal. But when you see 12 people working on you in a room like this, and then later find out, I should have known this beforehand, they were actually sticking holes on the inside of my heart, and all these cables were on the inside of my heart, not the opposite, outside. Yeah, I think I might have been a little less gung-ho and a little bit more nervous. But in any case, so that night, I don't know why, I'm like fully energized, full of life, just having all these ideas about, what to do in life and how, just, I don't know, the meaning of life or whatever, just feeling very energized. And so much so, my mind is so active, I just can't sleep. So midnight passes, I'm still awake. 2 a.m. rolls around, I'm still awake. Oh, just a little side note here. I'm in a hospital, and if you call their, customer service number, and it's got, thousands of employees probably, it says every employee and every visitor must wear a mask 24/7, right? So in this nurses station, they assumed all the patients were asleep. No one's going to be bothering them. They're all asleep, recovering from surgery, and under, secondhand anesthesiology or whatever, anesthesia. But lo and behold, I catch them having this meeting. The nurses from several floors, the top nurses, lead nurses, were on my floor in that little nurses station, right in the middle of the floor, right in the middle of a big hospital with couple of thousand employees, 8 of them there, not a single one had a mask on. And at the hospital my wife worked at, where, the boss said, everyone needs to wear a mask, when the administrator of the hospital came and visited them, he never wore a mask. The news reported that they had allegedly 400 employees of that hospital infected with COVID. I called the news station. I said, did you talk to one of them? Well, no, we just report the numbers that were given by the government. They don't investigate them. They just report, Let me show you one other thing here. I just can't help but not show it here. Here's a slide that I took a while ago, and at this particular time, New York City, corrupt United States of America, right, reported... it has a population of 8 million. It reported nearly 20,000 COVID deaths, okay? Now, Tokyo, which has a population 5 times greater, 500% greater, right, only had 141 deaths, which is like less than 1%. And they have 5 times the visitors, 500% more visitors from China visit Tokyo than New York, right? And didn't the virus come from China, right? Allegedly. So why is it that this city, right, has allegedly, right, 20,000 deaths, and this one right by, China with 5 times the population only has 141 deaths? Oh, and did I mention this city, New York, had a lockdown, and this one never had a lockdown? Never locked down the society. Never closed any restaurants, banks, shops, nothing. People walking around. Isn't that interesting? And you think the United States government news media tells the truth. I'm sorry to say, and some of you listening believe that the United States is the second beast power in chapter 13 of Revelation, and that satanic lying entity, you're going to believe what's going on, the one that says abortion clinics and liquor stores can stay open but churches must close. That's who you're believing. If that's not satanic directive, I don't know what is. But anyway, I digress. So then 3 o'clock rolls around, 4 o'clock rolls around, 5 o'clock in the morning, the next day, Friday morning. I haven't slept any of Thursday night. And finally, around 5:30 Friday morning, the following day of the operation, I finally start going to sleep. And right as I'm going to sleep, I have a vision from God that's biblical. Now, I've had about maybe 5 of these, or a few more, maybe up to 7, in my entire life. So I have one about every 7 years or so. Super vivid, always about the Bible, God, things like that. Very profound, just unable to fully describe what they are. This is the shortest and the most precise vision I've ever had. And I've got a graphic that I'm about to show you of exactly what I saw. Okay? And this is what I saw. I saw a black light screen right as I'm falling asleep here, right? And this is what it said on it. It had white lettering, just like this, about taking up about a third of the screen, and it said Luke 21:11. Now, I read my Bible chronologically. I've read it several times from cover to cover, and I just read it from cover to cover and over again. At the current place I'm in the Bible, I read a little bit of the Old Testament, a little bit of the New Testament every day. I'm toward the end of the New Testament, so I read Luke like 6 months ago. So it's not like Luke chapter 21 was fresh in my mind from a week ago or a month ago. I haven't read the book of Luke for about 6 months. And this is very, very specific. Luke 21:11. So I thought, well, I'm just now falling asleep. I don't even want to reach over 1 foot to my nightstand that has a pen and notepad. I'll remember. Luke 21:11, Luke 21:11, Luke 21:11. I say to myself, then I say, I might forget. This is important. I better write it down. So I write it down, and then the next day I look it up. Okay? This is what Luke 21:11 says. This is Jesus speaking, and he's answering the question as to what will be the signs that will immediately precede his imminent return. And Jesus says, and there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, which is pandemics, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. Now, there's a preacher, I think his name was John Paul Jackson. He died about 5 years ago. He had a vision from God about pandemics. He said there's going to be 2 in the future. The first one will be a false flag or will not amount to much. I believe that's the COVID. You see, that really, it's no worse than the flu. I'm sorry if that sounds conspiratorial, but it is a virus. The virus is real, but it's being blown way out of proportion, especially when the health director of the entire state of Illinois confessed the following. She said, if we have a patient who is already on their deathbed from cancer, when they die, we label it a COVID death. And then New York City admitted that a third of the people on their rolls who are listed as COVID deaths were never actually tested for the antibody to see if COVID was in their bloodstream. And yet they labeled it a COVID death. Okay. So, but he said the second one, which is one I believe yet to happen, that will be the real one. Now, if these people, the CIA, the Illuminati, whoever they are, they admitted that the Gulf of Tonkin incident from 1964 during the Johnson administration, thank you, fan, I've yet to write you back to correct me on when and that happened. They said they staged it. This was the Pearl Harbor of the Vietnam War. They said they gave a report that they were attacked by the North Vietnamese. John McNamara, Defense Secretary, said, well, in fact, that never happened. We lied. That led to the death of 2 million people because they lied. Okay? So people who are willing to kill 2 million people without thinking, 3,000 on 9/11, believe me, they will, if they want to, release a biological weapon next time that's real and deadly to do whatever their nefarious plans are. Remember, the devil comes to kill and steal and destroy. So now that I had this vision, remember, this is exactly what I saw. It was like a black TV screen with this in the middle. Very clear, very specific, Luke 21:11. And again, this is what it says, and I'm going to give you my interpretation of it, because I don't necessarily know the significance of it, but I'm going to give you my best impression of that. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, which is pandemics, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. So, when I had this vision, and when I looked it up, what it meant, saw the scripture, what does that mean to me? Well, I would say it means two things. Number one, the end times have begun. There's no more guessing. There's no more, is this it, or is it going to be later? Is the end times begun? We're not sure. To me, God is telling me, and I guess to tell other people, right? The message is the end times have begun. Because of all the verses in the Bible, and I know it has 1,000 pages and probably 100 verses per page, or 2 pages, right? You know, that's like 100,000 verses out there in the Bible. But I only had the vision of this one out of that 100,000. 21:11 of Luke. There will be great earthquakes, famines, pandemics, and great signs in the heavens. So my belief is that this is God telling me, and I guess thereby other people, that the end times have begun. The second thing that I would take out of this is because this is listed first, right? The seals of Revelation are listed in order. Seal 1, Seal 2, Seal 3. That doesn't necessarily mean this is the right interpretation, but here's my, my educated feeling, guess, whatever you want to call it. This is listed first. Okay, great earthquakes. So I believe that this is going to happen next. That would be my interpretation. Not only is this confirmation the end times have begun, no second guessing, right? And there will be great earthquakes. Now, I saw a documentary about 6 months, a year ago, and I forgot who it was about. It was about like either Leonardo da Vinci or Newton, some super genius, savant genius who was also a believer in God, in Christ, that lived about 500 years ago. And their mathematical savant guess of the timing, not the exact date, but the window of timing when Christ would return, I believe they said in their minds it would be between 2020 and 2030. That's what they said. Okay? So, take that for what it's worth. And so this is what I believe this is going to happen next. Great earthquakes. Now, I was compelled to share this with you as well in the heading here. Now, there's a telescope. It's the most powerful telescope in the world. It's a binocular, 3-dimensional telescope, and it's also a very rare infrared telescope. It's owned by the Vatican, the Jesuit sect, the CIA sect of the Vatican, right, which is the first beast power in Revelation chapter 13. Otherwise, what better disguise for the seat of Lucifer than the church, the most powerful church on earth, that all corrupt world leaders bow down and kiss the ring of the Pope, right? There was a Jesuit priest who talked about this telescope, which is called the Lucifer telescope. You see that? It's called the Lucifer telescope. So why would they name a telescope after Lucifer? Wouldn't they call it the Jesus telescope? No, they call it the Lucifer telescope. And a lot of that, papal symbolism and their robes and everything. It comes from Baal worship, which is Beelzebub, which is Lucifer, right? So this guy said on his deathbed, the highest levels of Vatican governance know what is approaching the earth, and it will be of the utmost importance in the coming years. So this Lucifer telescope is tracking a particular object, you see, that will be the utmost importance in the coming years. Isn't that interesting? Didn't it just say here in Luke, and there will be sights, fearful and great sights from heaven? And the Lucifer telescope, the guy confessed that they are tracking an object that will be of the utmost importance in the coming years. My article about Planet X will be linked in the description of this video. Here's another quote from it, okay? Janet Napolitano, just like President Eisenhower, on both of their last days in office, gave a warning to mankind. And she said, a natural disaster, the likes of which the United States nation has never seen, is likely on its way. So there's some clues here. It's a natural disaster. It's one that has never happened to the United States before, and it can be predicted years in advance. Now, we've seen hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods. Those are natural disasters, but you certainly can't predict those years in advance, and our nation has seen them. What is a natural disaster that has never happened before in America that you could know about years in advance? It's something coming from outer space. A comet, an asteroid, or what's known as a rogue planet. It is estimated that there are twice as many free-floating planets, not orbiting stars, as there are planets orbiting stars. We have 9 planets. That means our solar system is subject to 18 rogue planets, much larger than the Earth, generally, free-floating, that might come near or collide with the Earth and cause a disaster, the likes of which the nation has never seen, which is a natural disaster that can be predicted years in advance because of the geometry of being able to predict incoming comets and asteroids years and years before they happen, right? Just like they said, something is approaching Earth through the Lucifer telescope. I believe Planet X, its nickname is Lucifer, that comes to kill and destroy, and that's why they called it the Lucifer telescope. It's named after the object they are tracking that is heading toward the Earth, a natural disaster that we have never seen before, that you could know about years in advance. And what did Jesus say? There will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the sky, and on the earth the distress of nations, with perplexity, as the sea and the waves roar. You see, it is estimated that Planet X is about 7 times larger than the Earth, or about 30 times larger than the moon. So if the moon caused tidal effects, if you had a moon that was 30 times bigger, that would really cause the sea and the waves to roar, wouldn't it? Not a comet, not an asteroid. You see that? Men's hearts will fail them from fear and expectation of those things which are coming upon the whole earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Now, I read Isaiah recently, and here's what it says in Isaiah 13. And we're going to read verses 10 through 13. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. Planet X would block out the sun much longer than an eclipse would. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Again, Planet X article, detailed, that I wrote, linked in the description of this video. And God says, I will punish the world for their evil, and their wicked, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, meaning this event is going to kill a lot of people on the earth, maybe the majority. Even a man more rare than the golden wedge of Ophrah. I guess that's where good gold comes from. And then here it is, the verse I wanted you to say. Therefore, I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall move out of her place. You see that? The earth will move out of her place. Most people don't realize this, but prior to the year 705 BC, all the advanced civilizations of the world, and I talk about this more in detail in the article, which is linked underneath this video, all those civilizations that had great astronomers and calendars, the Hebrews, the Mayans, the Sumerians, the Chinese, they all had the earth having a 360-day year. Same with the Hebrew calendar. That's why a compass has 360 degrees on it. Also, that's a wonderful testimony of a divine creator, because every month had exactly 30 days. Now, how could that happen coincidentally? So previously there was a testimony in the moon and in the sun of divine clockwork handiwork. And then something happened. Some believe it's recorded in 2 Kings, where King Hezekiah asked the prophet for a sign, which was to make the shadow go the other direction on the sundial, which was not a circle, which was actually steps, which means the earth tilted, right, at that point for the shadow to go backwards. And then immediately after that exact event at 705 BC, all the calendars of the world over the next couple of years immediately updated themselves to having a 365-day year. So why did the Earth's year go from 360 days to 365 days overnight? I believe because it was pulled further away from the sun. The earth shall be removed out of her place. You see, one translation says the earth shall be moved out of her place. The earth shall remove out of her place, saying the same thing, meaning that the earth was pulled further away from the sun around 705 BC, and therefore it had a greater distance to travel around the sun, and therefore the day of the year changed from 360 days to 365, and then the testimony of God's handiwork was destroyed by what? Planet X, the destroyer. Lucifer got rid of that digital testimony and the working of the sun and the moon and the earth. So this is what I think the vision means. Remember, I saw this as clear as day, okay? I saw this like on the screen, just like this, and it said Luke 21:11. Very specific. That's exactly what I saw when I came right at the point of sleep after staying up for 24 hours after my heart surgery. So this is also a pivotal point in my life when I had this. And that's very specific out of the 100,000 or more scriptures, verses that are in the Bible. And again, what does that say? It says it right here. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. I believe it means the end times have now begun. No need to guess or wonder anymore. They have begun. And my personal interpretation is because great earthquakes is listed first, that is something that may happen next. If you want to support me personally, and you want to support the work I do at this channel, please click on that link below this video and show your support with a generous one-time donation, or you can click the box and make it a regular monthly donation. And thank you so much for your kindness and for your support.